isn't food. Good morning, and welcome to ScreenJunkies Universe. I'm Roth, Cornet, that's Dan Murrell.
Hello.
Spencer Gilbert is here.
Mahalo.
Along with Roxy Striar. Don't tease me. I wish I was in Hawaii every moment of every day of my life. Here we are back from Comic-Con. Beautiful San Diego, the whale's vagina, if you will. We have a lot to talk about today.
Do they call it that?
Anchorman.
Oh. Wow, get my references better.
You joking with me? It's a tired joke. It's from yesterday's JT Twitter. I'm getting a slow clap from New Parker Ryan, so I'm going to leave. More Marvel news and other stuff, too. Let's start with that Robert De Niro. And Francis Conroy joining the Joker cast. Potentially, they're in talks. This is via the Rep. He's in final negotiations to join the Joaquin Phoenix Joker from Todd Phillips, as is Francis Conroy. Francis Conroy would play his mother, Penny, while De Niro would play a talk show host who is somehow instrumental in the Joker's origin. And it's interesting because as Billy and I were talking about this morning in the car, the first thing I said when he mentioned De Niro, and that's before I knew what the role was going to be, was like, is Scorsese involved? You know, he's not, because they would be touting that at every piece of marketing material from the mind that brought you all of the things that we want you to think this is the Joker. But that has like a super King of Comedy vibe to it. So are they just really like doing Mean Streets meets the King of Comedy?
Now, I didn't do any research on this save for somebody who unsourced tweeted this at me, but Scorsese's producing partner is producing. Not Scorsese, but like someone who produces a lot of movies with Scorsese is a producer on this movie.
So the McDowells of iconic filmmaking,
yes.
From the mind that was next to the mind that brought you all of the things we want you to think.
Something someone tweeted at me, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, even if there's no actual relation, like I feel like the Marvel model of doing, it's a heist movie, but we put a superhero in it. It's a 70s spy thriller, but we put a superhero in it. Is cool to do, like we're doing a Mean Streets King of Comedy Scorsese movie, but we put a supervillain in it. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
You are correct.
I am correct. Thank you.
Emma Tillinger-Koskoff is still aboard, although Scorsese is no longer producing.
And by the way, that's not to be disrespectful, because a lot of times people's producing partners, Clark and I were talking about this the other day, have a massive influence on the final product. We were talking about iconic Hollywood producer Deborah Hill and her work with John Carpenter and how heavily she influenced his work. So that's awesome, and no wonder this sounds like Mean Streets means the King of Comedy, which frankly, yes please. Dan, are you more on board? Look at this cast. Look at this cast. Come on.
Are you looking, Dan? Are you looking?
Look at this. That's my Joker.
It's a lot this morning.
That's what I would
I'm
be
somehow
doing.
more tired today than I was yesterday, and I don't understand how this
They
works.
say that happens.
You gotta
yeah,
get some coffee.
It's bizarre. This is just weird still.
Yeah?
It's not that I'm on or off board. It's just it keeps getting odder.
You don't think this is
stranger.
congealing around a movie we've kind of seen before of that era of gritty street-level New York crime films?
Yeah, but I don't know if I would have seen the Joker. It's just so. It's just I don't. I color me curious. I just don't get it.
Would you be more excited if it wasn't a Joker film?
Maybe, although it's like De Niro's street movie. Okay, I don't know. It's like what. This is just weird to me. Everything about this is weird. Maybe it's that weird alchemy that becomes gold. But De Niro and Phoenix and I don't know.
Maybe Zazie and
maybe
Francis
right.
Conroy?
Zazie Beetz are talking about and Francis Conroy. Yeah, I don't know. I just think I've got to. It's one of those things that it's just you got to see it. I got to see something from it. I got to see it to get it, because right now it's just so weird and odd and bizarre to me.
I agree. That's why I'm excited. I feel like the whole movie is actually starting to play out in my mind, though. With every new announcement, I feel like I get it more and more. What about you?
It's a dangerous game, but
Do you think
it's a dangerous game. I wouldn't do that. I would advise against that.
It only leads to disappointment.
Exactly, and the dark side.
I appreciate that warning, but I'm doing it anyway. What do you think, Roxy?
I'm kind of in Dan's camp here. Yes, Dan, we're in the same camp. I'm confused. It's hard because as a massive DC fan coming out of Comic-Con, where I'm so excited about what we saw from Shazam and what we're seeing from Aquaman and everything going on there, it's hard to compartmentalize, like, different world, different thing, movie I never wanted, actors I really like, maybe this is an okay thing to root for, but then I'm like, don't do it. Like, Dan said, like, don't root for it. Just think it sucks, and then when it comes and it's good, be excited. So I'm trying to hedge my bets, I guess, a little bit. I love Frances Conroy. She's very talented.
Very good actress,
and that is equally as exciting to me as De Niro.
Do you guys, if you don't know who Frances Conroy is, you do from things like American Horror Story, 6 Feet Under.
I feel like she could be the Joker's mom. Like, not the actual actress herself,
Like
but
character?
the character that she is capable of playing could be the Joker's mom. So I think they nailed that.
Yeah.
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 I think part of it is going to be in the years, months, whatever to come, as we know where exactly Warner's is steering the ship as far as their properties, in the sense that I think we now have a very good sense about where they're taking the main universe with Aquaman and Shazam and Wonder Woman. A little brighter, a little more standalone, a little more of just a bigger thing without it all being tied under one umbrella as closely. Now, the thing that is going to help me contextualize this movie is, what are they doing with the other properties? What's happening with Matt Reeves' movie? Are they spinning off into these little pocket universes? That for me is what's going to kind of tie.
Are they going to go full Titans? Because don't go full
I don't want
Titans
to. Yeah,
with
I
with this
didn't
movie.
quite like what I saw with Titans.
Oh, yeah, but if anybody's going to say fuck Batman, it's the Joker. That's one.
I appreciated it.
Thank you. I don't know. I feel like I'm on Planet Bizarro because I am so full tilt in on this thing.
I'm
Well,
curious.
you have to be on Planet Bizarro to be full tilt in on this. Like,
Thank you.
In the best way. Like, how do you look at this and be like, yeah, that's normal and sounds like an average movie, and okay.
It doesn't, and that's why I'm so full tilt in, because I don't know if it'll be good. I really don't. If it's truly just trying to imitate the early brilliant work of Martin Scorsese and stick in the Joker, then it won't be. But if it's riffing on that in a smart way that brings something new, then I think that's pretty exciting. And
I think it has high boom bust potential.
Yes.
High ceiling, low floor.
And I'd rather see that almost, well, period. I'd always rather see that than something just kind of like by committee or by spreadsheet. That's serviceable but kind of boring.
Especially if it goes closer to the ceiling than
Yeah.
the floor.
I just caught your analogy, and that is accurate. Yeah. All right. That's the Joker, Bobcat Goldthwait. Now, for those of you who don't know who comedian Bobcat Goldthwait is, Spencer's going to do his imitation now.
I can't.
Yes, you are.
Hi, I'm Bobcat Goldthwait. You remember me with the funny voice. That's
Terrible.
It's not bad. It's not terrible. That's pretty close. He's a comedian. He actually
He doesn't
does
actually talk like that.
But in real life, he doesn't. But his bit is that
But
he
it's a
talks
character,
like that. Yeah. That's what I did. It's better than mine.
He's a comedian who's turned strangely into quite a good director.
Yes.
Now.
Yeah, I forget what movies he made, but I remember it wasn't Edge of 17.
Billy will
It
help
was
us.
He
some
No,
made,
kind of-
that's Kelly from
I think it was
Montreal.
Father of the Year with Robin Williams way back when. That was a
World's
really,
Greatest
World's
Dad.
Greatest Dad.
World's
That's the one I'm
Greatest
thinking
Dad.
of. That was a really dark movie, but actually I quite enjoyed it. He's quite prolific.
Yeah. Well, he has some things to say about the James Gunn situation at Disney. Now, we talked about this over the weekend, but you weren't there, and you weren't there, and you weren't there. So let's just quickly recap it, which is that Disney fired James Gunn after some tweets from 10 years ago resurfaced. Here's what a lot of actors have come out in support of Gunn. They were very, 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 very offensive, bad, poorly toned and written jokes. Gunn had apologized for them previously. This bubbled up about a few years ago as well. And he apologized again in a statement. So that's catching us all up. And this is via Deadline. Bobcat Goldthwait, who did a voice for Hercules, asked Disney to remove his voice from an upcoming Disneyland theme park attraction. He said in an Instagram quote, "I would hate for you to come off," this is to Disney, "I would hate for you to come off as hypocritical, so I'm suggesting you remove my voice from the attraction that's coming to your park. It's called World of Color Villainous, and I reprised the role of Pain, a role I played in Hercules. You see, here's the deal. Years ago, I made a lot of sarcastically shocking and offensive jokes, many that I'm embarrassed about now, and I'd hate to make you guys look bad seeing that I'm openly critical of the president and his administration, and you seem to be taking your lead from some of his radical fringe supporters. Other celebrities that have since protested James Gunn's firing include Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Batista, really a lot that day and continuously, and Karen Gillan. So we talked about, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the situation in total. We talked about it a little bit the other day. I do want to put a little asterisk on our conversation from the other day and say, because we heard from some folks, no one's defending what Gunn said. It's indefensible. They're really horrible, nasty things to say. But when you look at the entire context of the situation, it's a little bit different than some other situations. And I think what we're missing in some of these conversations is nuance when you look at the total circumstances. That said, Spencer, what do you think of what Goldthwait is saying? What do you think of the situation in total?
Well, I think Goldthwait, I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but I think Disney owns your soul for life once you sign the contract.
He's not going to be able to get them to do that.
Yeah. Much like Hades, exactly.
But thanks for catching that.
I feel like everyone in this situation is a loser / it's just a bummer for every single side of this thing.
Yeah.
Including us.
Including us.
Yeah. I agree.
I think for James Gunn for making here's a dead baby rape joke, aren't I an edgelord? But in 2009, Disney for still, for being a hypocrite, for hiring him and then only making a stink of it now because the other loser side of this is the whatever Trump-humping Twitter account that does not actually care about offensive jokes and is just singling him out because he's politically outspoken on Twitter. So literally everyone, and then us, the audience.
Yeah.
Everyone's lost. We're all losers.
And whoever has to direct the next Guardians movie, too, that's a thankless job.
That's a completely thankless job. Yeah. And a no-win situation.
Yeah. So, like a lot of things recently, it just puts a bad taste in my mouth. And it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks all around.
Roxy?
Yeah, I feel awful for everybody, including everybody at this table and anybody who's a fan. And just yes, you said, Roth, these jokes are horrible, but I had a lot of people coming up to me at Comic-Con being like, what's your take on this? And it's I'm scared to speak because I don't want anybody to think I'm in support of what he said. And I'm also scared to speak because it's very hard to compare rude jokes and which ones are fireable jokes and which ones are not. I definitely think things that you're saying today make you more likely to be fired than things that you said a long time ago that were already found. But I'm sorry, I feel a little bad for him.
Yeah, well, don't be sorry. The whole situation sucks.
I am sorry because I know a Twitter storm comes from that, but I feel a little bad for him.
Look, hey, I hear you, but thank you for bringing that up as a matter of fact, because I think the biggest loser in this situation is America and the world. And I mean this for that very reason, is that silencing and being afraid to just say things and say things that you may later reconsider. I'm not talking about saying horrible things, but nobody is without mistakes in their life or saying things that they reconsider. That's part of the human journey. And growing from that experience, but if people are just now being silenced, I don't necessarily think that's good for anything. Certainly not for culture, certainly not for art, and certainly not for us as society. So I have seen slew upon slew of comedians having old stuff bubble up this week, right? Because this was successful.
Yeah.
Dan.
I worked for Channel 101 in 2009 when this thing with Dan Harmon came out. This Daryl sketch that they've now gone after him, and it's the same alt-right, dickheads who don't care about actual offensive jokes. They've said things that are 10 times worse. I don't think that any of James Gunn's stuff was funny. I don't like it. It does offend me. It's just not my brand of humor, and honestly, I don't know whose brand of humor it is. I think it's insensitive. I think it is offensive. But at the same time, and I'm not even saying he shouldn't have been fired. What I'm saying is, number one, they knew about this. They knew about this already. Number two, we're in a different climate. I understand that this should have sparked a discussion. This should have sparked a debate. This should have sparked a discourse. It's not the same as the Roseanne thing, which is the exact reason they went after Gunn, because they knew Disney was painted into a corner, because they're incapable of having an actual conversation right now about anything. People, especially corporations, Disney's in the middle of a merger. They knew that Disney would have to act. It's not the same thing. There should have been some debate about it. There wasn't. They made a snap move that I think they knew they were going to make. And this thing with like Harmon, the Daryl thing, they know he's not a pedophile. They know that James Gunn's not a pedophile. They're calling him that because they made terrible jokes that were in poor taste, and they know that they can go after him with one of the worst accusations that you can make about something. This Daryl thing that Dan Harmon quit Twitter. I was in the room when that screened at Channel 101. 2009, I think it was. Like, that's what that show largely was. It was screened in front of a live audience, and there were shows that were parodies of pop culture. There were shows that were heartfelt stories. There were shows that got made that were there because they knew that they were going to be screened in front of a live audience, that were there to shock and to get a reaction out of that crowd. That's what that show was. Dan Harmon's not a pedophile. That wasn't my favorite Channel 101 show of all time. I personally was just like, oh my God, that is way beyond what I consider to be the boundaries of good taste. But it was made for that reason. Mm-hmm. It was made because it was provocative. I'm not defending it. I'm not saying he should have made it, and I'm not saying that. And nowadays, when you look back on it, you shouldn't go back and say like, "Wow, yeah, you know what? That was too far," and I apologize for that. I'm sure every single one of us at this table has said or done something 10 years or 15 or 20 years ago that if we were put in a time machine and confronted with it, that we wouldn't say like, "Wow, you know, that was either something that I have grown as a person that I didn't realize, or I don't agree with the context that I made that joke in." That's a discussion that needs to be had. And we're in a climate now where you can't have that discussion because people take something like that and they equate it with something that is objectively, demonstrably fireable or bad, and they say these two things are on the same plane, and we're going to make such a noise that we're going to force you to treat it like that.
Yeah, because the thing is, when you cut off conversation, when you cut off the opportunity for someone to which he has grown since he said those things. He has changed as a person, according to him, and I don't see him doing that now. So you have to sort of believe it. If you cut off that opportunity, say if you're in just a business, pretend it's not James Gunn, pretend you're in a business, and your employee tweets like that were found or something like that. If you cut off the opportunity to have that conversation with that person, then you actually don't change anything. If you just silence and fire them, then you sort of suppress the expression and you don't discuss why it's hurtful. And someone really getting why it's hurtful is how they change their behavior and how we evolve.
Why would anybody ever change or grow if it didn't matter? If you're going to be held accountable for things that you've done 10, 20 years ago, and more than just held accountable, if you're going to be treated like you're the same person, why would you change or grow? There would be no point, except for internally to feel like a better person. But people need that external love and support. And I also feel like, Dan, what you're talking about is what I was alluding to with the Roseanne situation. That was something she tweeted today. Yes. It was something that not today as in today, but this time period. And it's something that she was saying that was incredibly racist. And also, being in this industry, I'm sorry, we hear things from our friends who are working with these people and ourselves who are working with these people, and we know where people's hearts are. And when you're tweeting something racist and you are, I'm sorry, racist, then it's more fireable than somebody who's done something years ago who doesn't feel that way.
And I mean, we discussed this before with their issues in the past. If you're a filmmaker today, right now, and this is where I think that we might see things in the future, I don't know why any filmmaker at this point right now today would ever sign up to make a movie for Disney. Because Disney has now shown, number one, if things are going poorly in their eyes creatively, or if things are not turning out the way that they're going to do, they will fire you in the middle of the movie and they will remake the movie. They will publicly trot you out your embarrassment. They've done it multiple times now, and they have also now shown, number two, that if you've done something in the past that at that exact precise moment, even if they've already dealt with the issue, even if you've already spoken with them and resolved it, if it becomes a moment where it's inconvenient for them to have a discussion about something, they will cut you loose like that. It doesn't matter what your relationship is with them. It doesn't matter how successful you've been. It doesn't matter the person that you are today. They will not even have that discussion. They will just cut you loose because it's not convenient convenient for them at that time to have that discussion. And that's not the kind of company that I think is going to attract a lot of filmmakers, particularly provocative ones, which is what they need. They need filmmakers that maybe in the past, who knows, I don't know what Taika Waititi's made. What if you dig up a Taika Waititi short from 8 years ago that's offensive to some people, even though it may not reflect his sensibilities today in this moment at all?
Trevor
Do
Noah
they cut
just had
Taika
a
Waititi
joke
loose?
bubble up.
Yeah, I mean, everyone. You should be accountable for your words and your thoughts and your actions, 100%. And at the same time, people learn, they grow, they change, they make mistakes. And now we're at a point where, because people were caught making mistakes and doing terrible things now, you now have a group of people saying like, okay, now we're going to go find mistakes from 10 years ago and we're putting them on the same plane and we're going to force you to take action. And that's not right. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be held accountable, but there's got to be a discussion. And there's a difference between somebody like Harvey Weinstein, who was doing things up until the day or the moment that he was caught and is in heinous criminal acts, and somebody like James Gunn, who made, I think, horribly offensive, tasteless jokes 10 years ago. For people to put them on the same plane like that's intellectually dishonest, and they know it. And I hate to see a company like Disney buy into that without even having a discussion. They know that that's not the case.
It's a false equivalency, and it's something that I think is again, I just want to keep hitting home because we did hear from some folks who were saying like, how can you feel this way about one thing and then not another? Because things are different. Well, and then I'm going to challenge us. The reason this situation is different is, one, it already came up and was dealt with by the company that employs him. That's number one, the most important reason. They already said this was okay. Two, it was 10 years ago, and it was something that he's already apologized for and said that he regrets and that he's a different human being. That's sort of the point of being alive, and that's sort of the point of this happening in our culture, is that so we can all grow and change and be better human beings. It's not so we can destroy people and let them burn, and let it all burn, throw out the baby with the bathwater. And number three, it was a pointed political attack, and it won. That's a very, very dangerous precedent to set, to silence the voices of artists or people that it is literally their job to give their opinions about, to have us in fear of speaking our opinions, whether we agree or disagree, is a very, very dangerous thing, period. So those are the distinctions. Those are the distinctions from other situations. And then the final distinction is it was a joke. It was a bad joke, but comedians and artists do things that don't work before they find the things that they do. That is part of the process, and it's a very different thing from acting in a discriminatory manner in reality or acting in a harassing manner in reality. Everybody's going to make mistakes, and there are gray areas that we all need to figure out together, and I'm not saying it's been done perfectly on all sides. It hasn't. That said, I'm going to challenge us now. Would we feel differently about this situation if a person we didn't like as much as we really do like James Gunn said it, or if it was a person who we fundamentally politically disagree with? Roxy, what do you think?
I think it depends on where they are today. I think if I felt like they were not a different person, not a better person, if I still thought that they were doing the same exact thing, same song, same dance, and I didn't like them for that reason, and then they pulled this up from 10 years ago, but you could pull up a similar tweet from yesterday, then I think that I would feel differently.
Is there something to be said? I think people are feeling like, oh, it's okay to silence one kind of political conversation, but not another. Spencer, what do you think?
Well, are we talking about political conversation? Because to me, these were just tasteless jokes.
Right.
So the reason that I'm saying that is because the fundamental truth of the matter is it wasn't about the jokes that he made 10 years ago. It was about the political conversation he has on Twitter now. That's why he was targeted.
Right.
Right. So that's what's been silenced is James Gunn. The attempt was to remove his platform. And do you think that we feel okay about people having a platform like Roseanne removed when we really just fundamentally don't agree with Roseanne?
I don't know. I mean, to me, Roxy hit on it. It's a timing thing. Like to say something. If James Gunn said what he said last week, of course, yeah, Disney would have to. They'd have no choice but to fire him.
Yeah. Regardless if he was a liberal, a conservative, Republican, a Democrat, a member of the Green Party, like it wouldn't matter if he said it last week.
Yeah, I think that I'm old enough to have lived. I think we're all old enough to have lived through the middle of the last decade, or 2008 or whatever. Shock humor was like, this was just peak South Park.
Yeah.
Dane Cook ruled the comedy stage,
Yeah.
and it was all about like how far can you push things, because like we weren't having the same conversations we're having today. There was more of a bubble of security that comedy was performing in, and it was just like we didn't have real problems, so we saw how far we could push jokes.
Yeah.
Dead baby jokes. So popular. We all remember dead baby jokes.
I'm
That was
very
hilarious.
familiar, yeah.
And we all grew out of it.
Do you remember, like, it was like, what? I was literally about to tell one. Do you see what we're saying? I'm not going to. Spencer, continue.
I'm just saying we all lived through that, some context of eras in comedy, and trends come and go, and there were other shock periods of comedy, like Sam Kinison in the 80s and stuff like that, and Andrew Dice Clay, and being offensive is something that kind of is cyclical that we think is funny. It's not funny right now. It probably will be in 10 years, and it was when James Gunn made these comments. So...
Well, even if it wasn't funny when he made these comments, he had a better shot at being funny. It was more like in the vein of what was funny at the time.
Right. To me, I see a guy trying and failing to be funny in 2008 terms.
Yeah.
So
Dan?
I think that we've had this is the most distressing thing for me, is this is the conversation that should have been had. This is the conversation that I think should have been had at Disney. This is the conversation I think that should have been had publicly regarding this. I'm not going to sit here and defend his tweets. For me, those are indefensible in the sense of just like, I can't sit here and say that those aren't offensive or that he should have tweeted them. I think that there's a lot of people that say there's no line in comedy. I personally disagree with that. There's a lot of people that disagree with me. That's what a discussion is, and that's what a conversation is. That's what discourse is. And, would I react the same way? I think that there are certain things that you have to defend, and I think, and one of them is that people have the capacity to change, and that if somebody does something a long time ago, is that on the same footing as somebody that does something today, right now? And I think that it is.
And also that something
is
is words, not actions.
Exactly.
Right. So I think that the most distressing thing for me is just that we are in a time where people will exploit a climate, because that's what they're doing. They're exploiting the climate that was started by people uncovering transgressions that were happening currently, that were being hidden, that were being buried, and bringing them to the surface. And that has
real life consequences to real people.
Yes, they're taking that climate and they're now, and I've seen it, they're turning it against. And I've seen this discussion online. It's like, well, the left can't take it. They can sling it, but they can't. And they're saying that, like, well, if you sunk these people, so now it's your turn. And that's what's happening right now. And it's not the same. Things that people did that harmed other people physically and mentally now and decades ago. Well, if so-and-so did something decades ago and they have to be reliable for that. I'm sorry. Kevin Spacey and what he's alleged to have done with someone who was underage decades ago is not the same thing as James Gunn making a really poorly offensive joke on Twitter decades ago. Those are not the same things. And it's not even that the people doing these accusations don't know that. They do know that.
Yeah.
They know it 100%. They know it's not the same thing.
And to take somebody that's very far on the left that we've talked about, Louis C.K. There's a big difference between Louis walking into female comedians' rooms and exposing himself and making them feel uncomfortable and scared, and Gunn making bad jokes. There's a difference between something that has a direct impact on an individual who feels frightened and beyond frightened in certain cases and powerless, and eliciting that kind of a response out of people and making a bad joke, which I'm not saying can't be hurtful. It certainly can. It certainly can. But I think the intentions are very different, and I think the results are very, very different. I think we need to start looking at those nuances. And even having said that, like, I understand probably it's just in a broader sense, we need to start having conversations about, in this current culture, how much we are allowing people to just be human and flawed.
And I'll also just add, like, there are similar situations with, say, like Al Franken, who was jokingly, molesting someone while they were asleep. And I know this is weird, but I hold politicians to a higher standard of behavior than the directors of my comic book movies and musicians and artists. Like, the people who represent us, I think if James Gunn was a representative or a person in the government or some kind of like social service or something like that, then he should definitely step down and should justifiably be fired. But he's an artist. He works in comedy. Like, you can hold people to different standards. I don't think that's hypocritical when they're either representing you and the highest things we aspire to, or if they're just experimental artists who are just looking for their voice.
But the people that are doing this aren't even holding themselves to the same standard. If you look at the people that were behind this thing with James Gunn and go back and look at the shit they've said. They've said stuff that was worse, far worse than he said. It's not even holding people to a different standard. They don't hold themselves to that standard, and they know they don't.
Yeah.
This is payback. This is political payback. It is revenge against people for having political views that they disagree with. That is 100%. That is the motivation behind it. That is the reason behind it. They know that things can be taken out of context. They know that this is how the internet works. It's not about what it is. It's about what it looks like. And they're taking advantage of that.
Yeah. And I think, Spencer, I think that also the intention, not even just the intention of what the people, like the intention to make a bad joke or the intention to cause someone harm, are two very different things, but also the intention of sort of bringing these things to light is very different. And this is what I mean. When you're talking about somebody like Harvey, for example, the intention is to stop him from hurting people. The intention is to remove him from being in a position where he can continue to cause harm to other people, right? If James Gunn stopped making those jokes, let's say those jokes were harmful to people, if he stopped making those jokes, then done, right? The intention's complete. So I really think that it's just a very, very, very different thing, and that I hope that in the long term that we can really just like have conversations, allow there to be room for growth and people to sort of like be reformed and start really looking into the nuance of what that means, because it is hard and it is complicated as we look at all these various situations. But under that, like, what is the purpose of doing this is the main thing, which is like, we want to stop Harvey Weinstein from being put in a situation where he can for decades rape people and get away with it. That's one intention. We want to shut James Gunn up because we don't like what he says today politically. That's another intention. Those are very different things. Okay, well, this has been a fun show.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that Joker movie?
Why so serious?
Why so serious? We did have another story, but we're running a little long, so I'm just going to bump that over till tomorrow's show. And I'm going to tell you to watch the Honest Trailer and the Honest Trailer commentary. But really, the Honest Trailer should be telling you to watch us, in my opinion. Yeah. Right?
Right?
I don't know. Roxy, thanks for being with us today. You're the best. Say something nice.
Good on Zoe and Chris and Batista for standing up for what they believe in, whatever that is, even at any risk. And I like you guys a lot. Possibly even love, whatever.
I love you. There's no doubt in my mind. Spencer.
Dan, smile.
Social media is a plague that should be burned to the ground.
Good job, Dan Murrell.
Go out there, research something. Don't take someone else's opinion as your own. Actually, look into things. Think critically. Have conversations, have discourse, and then make up your mind.
But that's hard, Dan.
I know it's hard. I know that it's difficult, but that's I don't know. I feel like I'm just shouting into the wind at this point. Yay.
Yay. In this very complicated time, my take is like, we're all just doing our best, and everybody's probably making more mistakes than they would like every single day. And we're going to have to find a way to imperfectly move forward together. Bye. That's our show.